For years, the big three, Benfica, Porto and Sporting, have dominated Liga Portugal. No one has won it outside of the big three since Boavista in 2001. To show how long ago that was, since that time, Boavista have been relegated to the second league, relegated again to the third league, reinstated in the first division, only to be relegated again this past season. For more information about Boavista, check out either this Twitter thread I did below or the video I made in them last January. It looked like Braga could be the one to break this big three back in the 09-10 season, where they finished second in the league, and the year after they actually made the Europa League final, only losing to FC Porto. But unfortunately the hype was short-lived. They quickly fell down the table. But although they finished above Sporting in few recent years, and as late as 2023, they are still always known as the fourth biggest club in Portugal. So why do the big three hold such a monopoly over Portuguese football, and why could it come to an end? In this video, I'm going to explain my thoughts and potentially why it could come to an end, but also the disagreements of why it will stay for many years to come. If you do enjoy content like this, please subscribe. Let me know what type of content you want to see. But yeah, let's get into the arguments. The roots of the monopoly go deep. The big three were founded in the early 1900s and quickly rose to national prominence. As Portuguese football grew, so did the fan bases, not just in Lisbon and Porto, but across the entire country. Generations grew up supporting one of the big three and would usually support another team as their secondary. Winning became a habit for the big three, and habits are hard to break. With historic success came money, more fans, more tickets, more shirts, bigger sponsorships, and crucially, access to the Champions League and European competitions. That's tens of millions worth of prize money each year, money smaller clubs in Liga Portugal could only dream of. With this money, all three clubs built world-class academies and also set up world-class scouting networks. Sporting would produce Ballon d'Or winners like Figo and Ronaldo, whereas Benfica and Porto would have better success scouting across South America, bringing names such as Angel Di Maria, Hulk, Radamel Falcao, Nico Gaitan and many more. All that would turn a huge profit for both clubs. In most cases, players would arrive for a few million and be flipped to sold on to 40 plus. Every season, the big three are the favourites for the European spots, with Braga, usually Vitória Guimarães, and another club would be fighting for the Conference and Europa League. And every time the big three would qualify, they would grow stronger, they would get better financially, but they would also grow in reputation and recruiting power. It's a never-ending cycle. Win the league, play in Europe, earn more money, win again. The big three also carry weight behind the scenes. They influence TV deals, scheduling and league decisions. In Portugal, the spotlight follows the biggest clubs, and the league's commercial model definitely reflects that. Nothing reflects this more, however, than Benfica TV. Benfica TV is a rare case in European football and ties directly into the club's strategy for independence, revenue and control. In 2013, Benfica made a bold move. Instead of selling their league match rights to a broadcaster like Sport TV, they decided to keep the rights in-house and broadcast their own home matches exclusively on Benfica TV. They were the first major European club to do this. It also meant fans of other clubs would have to subscribe to Benfica TV if they wanted to watch their team play Benfica at home. Why? Benfica believed they could earn more money and control by selling subscriptions directly rather than through a third party. By owning the rights, Benfica kept 100% of the revenue from subscriptions and advertising. They could set their own broadcast schedule, pricing and brand presentation. It gave them total creative and commercial control, something no other Portuguese club had at the time. And it worked for a while. At its peak around 2018, Benfica TV had over 400,000 subscribers in Portugal alone. So why didn't Liga Portugal stop Benfica from showing their own games on Benfica TV? Because the short answer is legally, they couldn't. Portuguese clubs individually own the rights to their league matches, at least their home games. That meant Benfica owned the broadcast rights to any game played at the Estádio da Luz, Sporting and Porto controlled theirs, and so did smaller clubs. There was no centralised TV deal like in the Premier League or La Liga, so legally Benfica was free to sell or broadcast their home games wherever they wanted. Porto and Sporting did launch club channels, but they don't show their league matches live because they chose to sell their rights to Sport TV or other broadcasters who paid more in upfront money. A better example of this in terms of lower down the league is Moreirense, who sold their first team home games to SICK TV just to get them a bit more money. And it also means they're shown on sort of free cable TV as well, so anyone could have access to Moreirense's home league games. So, at short, this is why the big three dominate the league. They've built an empire through history, money, talent and influence, but it's not just a league, it's a hierarchy, and the top sit at the big three. But even empires fall, eventually. A wave of foreign investment is quietly reshaping the league. These aren't just smaller clubs anymore, they're strategic projects with serious backing. For example, Estrela de Amadora is now part owned by Patrice Evra and other international investors. Moreirense have recently been backed by the owners of AFC Bournemouth. Rio Ave are linked to the same group that owns Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos. Alverca are supported and owned by none other than world-class superstar Vinicius Jr. And Sporting Braga are 21.67% owned by PSG's QSI, the Qatar Sports Investments. If anyone's already knocking on the door of the big three, it is definitely Sporting Braga. They've finished top 4 in multiple seasons, and over the last 2 years have challenged Sporting and FC Porto for that third place position. They've also reached Europe in multiple seasons, and now have serious cash from Qatar. They're not just surviving anymore, they're building. They've already built a multi-million euro training complex, and have had players come through their academy like Roger Fernandez, Alvaro Jaló, and even more recently, youngsters who made their professional debuts last year like Alfonso Patrão, who would score against Sporting. But of course there is a downside to all this investment. You can look at clubs like Boavista, who are promised to be taken over by wealthy businessmen and now are sat in limbo. They don't know if they're going to play in the second division, the third division, or even in the district division. Boavista might not even exist as a club as we know it. Such is the case for clubs like Vitória Setúbal and even more recently Belenenses, which I have done an actual whole video on explaining what happened to Belenenses. But basically, to cut that story short, or you can watch that video if you want, up to you, but they were bought out by something called Code City, which was a company they were promised to invest in the sports model, and in turn, of course, they didn't, and that led to a breakaway club owned by the fans and run by the fans, Belenenses, and led to another club that stayed in the first division, BSAD. Belenenses had to grow from the district leagues and now in the third division of Portugal, while BSAD, as of recording, doesn't even exist anymore. And it's not just in Portugal we've seen this issue, we've seen it across Europe, especially in England. When you look at teams like Bury, you look at teams more recently like Reading, who have had points deductions, and there are so many other examples you can make of investments going wrong. But I do think in the Liga Portugal right now, you have investors who are investing smart. They're not just throwing money at a project and hoping it goes well. Estrela de Amadora are quietly building a decent team. They've got full of experienced stars from Liga Portugal, like Ferro, Jovan Cabral, Alan Ruiz. And this season, they've also confirmed the signing of former Sporting goalkeeper Renan Ribeiro, another former Sporting goalkeeper in Diogo Pinto, mixed with experience as players mentioned before, but also some young players who have come in, such as Jorge Mireles from Porto and João Resende from Benfica. Not to mention former Sporting player Diogo Pinto is only 21, mixed in with the experience of Renan, who's 35, Ferro, who's 28, Captain Miguel Lopez, who is already 38 years of age. And if you look at someone like Sporting Braga, they've made most of their recent big sales, record sales, since they joined partnerships with PSG. For example, Vitinha going to Marseille for 32 million euros, Trincao going to Barcelona for 30 million euros, David Calmo going to Porto for 20 million euros, Paulinho to Sporting for 16 million euros, Alvaro Jaló for 15 million euros, Rodrigo Gomez for 15 million euros, and the list goes on. But they've also managed to recruit very smartly. They've not spent over 11 million euros on a player, their record signing being this year Mario Dorgals from FC Midtjylland for 11 million euros. but they've also signed some decent young talent who they think they could flip for value, such as Bright Mbaye, Rodrigo Salazar, Thiago Helgueira, João Marquez, El Azuni, and many more. Braga have also got a team with experienced players as well. Joel Moutinho is still going strong at 38 years of age. Ricardo Horta is 30 years of age. Fran Navarro is 27. Andre Horta is 28. Paulo Oliveira 33. But they've also got some decent young talents coming through, such as Lucas Hornacek, who's 22 years of age. Bright Mbaye, as mentioned before, 22 years of age. Leonardo Lelo, who's been a very good fullback for Casapia in Liga Portugal, 25 years of age. Gorby is 22. Garbi is 21, Roger Fernandez is 19, and Alfonso Patrão is 18. They have got a squad that they can reinvest in, but also build players to sell on for profit. But they are still being very competitive at the same time. The one thing that does need to improve in Portugal is their European performance, as they have fallen down the coefficients year after year. Vitória Guimarães put up a very good fight this season in the Conference League, but unfortunately only made it as far as the round of 16. Sporting Braga would be knocked out in the league phase of the Europa League. Porto would be knocked out in the qualification part of the Europa League, as would Sporting. The only team to make it further than those lot are Benfica in the round of 16 of the Champions League. But that in lies the problem. If the big three aren't doing their way as well, there is no way the coefficients will improve to allow the teams in to get more Champions League or Europa League spaces. But in short, here is why I think potentially the grip could loosen from the big three. The investment is growing, not just in terms of the clubs, but also in terms of training, scouting networks of some of these clubs being satellite clubs, but were able to get loan deals from teams, for example, like Moreirense and Bournemouth, Braga and PSG, and the list goes on. But also access to more in-depth analytics that they wouldn't get on their own. Global networks are feeding talent into these clubs, but also more European spots thanks to UEFA's revamped competitions means more money for mid-table teams, as we've seen in the Conference League with Vitória Guimarães. But smarter recruitment is also closing the talent gap, with them having access to elite club scouting networks. And we've seen some players come in to lower league teams that have been sold on for profit. Just recently, Arauco would sell Chico Lamba to Saint Etienne for €8 million, which might not seem a lot, but for a club like Arauca, and especially 50% of it going to Sporting, that is a lot of money they can reinvest, not just in terms of players, but in terms of wages and in terms of just the club in general. But change doesn't always come in form of a title. It comes when the gap narrows and when smaller clubs consistently challenge, and that's when Portuguese League becomes more competitive from top to bottom. But let's not kid ourselves here, the mountain is still steep, and this won't happen overnight. The big three still generate far more revenue, especially through Champions League participation. They dominate the fan culture and media attention. Most fans will support one of the big three, and in some cases Braga, but then would support their local or a second division team in terms of maybe from mid-table downwards in Liga Portugal, and from the second divisions as well. The big three still have institutional power in Liga Portugal's decisions, and until TV rights are centralised, smaller clubs will still sell cheap while the giants cash in. Like they have in Spain, as you can see from this image from 2014 to 2021 TV rights deals. The big three may still rule, but if clubs like Braga, Estrela and Alverca keep building, they won't be the only ones in the conversation for long. And that is it for this video in terms of why the grip could be loosening on the big three stronghold on Liga Portugal. What do you guys think? Do you think this is just not going to happen? Do you think some of these clubs are going to end up in the same position like a Boavista, like a Vitória Setúbal and also like a Belenenses? Or do you think some of these clubs are recruiting smarter? I think you look at Braga, I don't think PSG are going to pull out of that deal anytime soon, and Qatar are on limited funds already, so Braga have a lot to play with. They've already built a state-of-the-art academy. Their scouting network is improving. So I think if there's anyone that's close enough, it's going to be Braga. It might not even be they overtake one of the big three. Maybe it becomes the big four. And Braga have been knocking on the door recently. They've made European competition more recently, in the finals at least, than Sporting. So you never know. It's definitely something that could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. It's going to take years and years of building. I guess if you wanted a challenge on Football Manager, overtake Estrella, overtake Moreirense, overtake a Braga. See if you can break the mold. Let's see if you can loosen the grip that the big three have. It's the challenge that I've done before in FM or even on FIFA, and it's very fun. But anyway, I'm waffling here. I've been Sam once again. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and peace.